Hello and welcome to Lesson 6, Stop Your In-Group Bias. Dear ladies, today's lesson is about the in-group bias that women so consistently exhibit. This is a very unattractive feature of your characters. Quality men do not like it one little bit, so I'm going to point it out to you and let you see what it looks like, and then you can choose for yourself if you're going to make yourself a better wife or better potential wife by banishing this unpleasant character flaw from your life. Let me give you some examples of in-group bias to explain what it is. I was talking to a young woman, 28, at a client in Germany. She's a very attractive young lady, she's very smart, her colleagues speak well of her. We were just getting a cup of coffee at the same time and were talking while the kettle boiled. The conversation went like this. She said, Peter, may I ask you something about that is bothering me? May I ask you about something that is bothering me? And I said, sure. And she said, some of the comments you make bother me, and I'd like to ask you about them and why you have said them, particularly online. And I said, sure, go ahead. Well, you say 99.9% of women are liars and hypocrites on the issue of equality before the law. I'm concerned that you say that. And I said, well, thank you for letting me know and giving me a chance to explain myself to you. First of all, I do not say that, and I never have said, that 99.9% plus of women are liars and hypocrites on the issue of equality before the law. I have said many hundreds of times, qualified that with Western women. So let me ask you some questions, if I may. Do you think it is okay for a woman to kill a man in premeditated murder? And I asked it quite bluntly, quite straightly, just like that. And she was shocked and said, no, of course not. You cannot murder someone, no matter what they have done. That is a matter for the police and the courts. And I said, okay, what about false rape allegations? Is it okay to knowingly and willingly make a false rape allegation simply to cause a man problems with the police, especially knowing that he might go to jail for such an allegation? Again, she was shocked at the question and said, no, of course not. False allegations are perjury, and that is a serious crime. It is not okay to accuse someone of anything knowing it is false, especially not a crime so serious as rape. Where are you going with these questions? And I said, I'm making a point, so please be patient. I will ask you one more question. Tell me, is it okay for a woman to make her husband dinner and put drugs in his dinner so that he's rendered unconscious, and then tie him to the bed and cut his penis off and put it in the garbage disposal? And again, she was shocked at my line of questioning and replied, I did not understand why you're asking these questions. Of course it's not okay to drug a man, cut his penis off, any more than it's okay to drug a woman and rape her. They are both terrible crimes. What are you getting at? And I said, well, you see, Western women, the ones that I say are liars and hypocrites in the 99.9% plus majority, take the position that those things are perfectly okay. Indeed, they will promote and reward women who have done these things. They will laugh about the fate of men on national TV. Millions of women will agree that these things are okay. And I said it in the most serious of voices and expressions so that she understood that I'm telling the truth. And she looked at me and said, you are telling the truth. This actually happens in the West? And I said, it sure does. And you are opposed to each of these situations I described. Tell me, where were you born and raised? Now, I won't say the country, but you all know by now that it is an Eastern European country that was controlled by the Russians, right? That's where she was born and raised. And I said, exactly. You are not a Western woman. You are an Eastern European woman. And my experiences, including with you, Eastern European women are lovely people who believe that men are people too and should not be treated worse than stray dogs, as we are treated in the West. So you see, when I say Western women, I do not mean you. You are a woman, sure, but you are nothing like a Western woman. But while I am at this, I want to teach you one other point, okay? You read or hear Western women and you immediately block out the word Western and hear women and put yourself in the group being mentioned and then take offense or upset at what is being mentioned, right? And she laughed and said, okay, you have me. That's exactly what I did. And I said, there is a name for this. It's called in-group bias. It is where people, especially women, identify themselves as being in a group and assign some bias for being in that group. And the bias can be positive or negative. And I said, for example, now she's not German and I'm not German, okay, but we both live in Germany. And I said, for example, here in Germany, the term Nazi has a very negative association given the history of what happened, right? But not all Nazis were bad people. Many people from other lands associate all Germans with Nazis and criticize all Germans. But of the Germans alive today, almost none of them were Nazis, and almost none of them were alive during the war. So the in-group bias of calling all Germans Nazis, or in some other way criticizing all Germans today for World War II, that other people present is a very negative and destructive thing to do, right? And I said to her, you are an individual. You may be a member of numerous groups, but you are still an individual, and you should never take what is said about a group overall to be about you, especially if you know it not to be true. When you hear a group criticize, you are best advised to listen to the criticism and ask yourself, is that true of me? If it is not true of you, then you can ignore the comment because it does not apply to you as an individual. If what was said is true of you, and you know that, then you have no grounds on which to be offended or pretend upset. It is up to you as an individual to deal with your behaviour that you are being criticised for if it is true for you. And I said the weakest and most useless proposition to take is to hear a comment about a group, falsely apply it to you because it is not true for you, and then pretend some offence or upset over the comment that is not even true for you. That just aggravates you and wastes everyone else's time, okay? So I recommend you never fall for the in-group bias again. It does not serve you well to do so, okay? And she said, oh, okay, thank you very much for listening to me and hearing my concern and teaching me about this. You are right. If Western women agree with murdering and injuring men and find these things funny and amusing, then I'm not like them. I believe all lives are sacred and that no one has any right to murder anyone else no matter what has happened. And you are right, I'm not like these women at all. I smiled at her and she was on her way. She now not only felt good about herself, she knew that she should avoid taking comments about a group as being about herself unless she knew that to be true. Here is another example of in-group bias. There was it's a rather famous one. A Toronto police officer was giving a talk to women about how to reduce their probability of being attacked or sexually assaulted. I believe it was at a university in Toronto, but I could be wrong about that. The officer allegedly said words to the effect that if women do not dress provocatively, do not dress in short skirts and revealing clothes, they were less likely to be attacked or sexually assaulted. This is directly akin to telling a man, if you do not want to be assaulted or robbed, then do not walk into bad neighbourhoods looking like you have money on you by such things as dressing well or wearing expensive accessories that are visible like watches or rings, okay, things that are plainly visible, that are plainly of value. So you would imagine the women said, thank you for your good advice and your concern in teaching us to take better care of ourselves, right? That's what you would imagine. Wrong. The women were offended and upset, and this was the spark for global slut walks. The women took the position that the way a woman dressed should have no effect on whether they are attacked or sexually assaulted by criminals. They accused the police officer of being a sexist woman hater, when indeed he had given his time to give women good advice to help them stay safer. There followed a massive worldwide movement of women having protest marches dressed in the most provocative of clothing, shouting out slogans about being a slut is perfectly okay and sluts have rights too, etc. These women were insisting that someone should do something about how women are more likely to be attacked just because they were sluts or dressed like sluts. They were talking about how women have the right to be dressed like sluts and be walking home in the dead of night and should be 100% protected and safe when they chose this behaviour. Indeed, in our forum, where we record instances of men murdering women, we have pointed out that in many cases, the woman who has been murdered was dressed like a slut, walking home from some party in the dead of night, and almost invariably alone. You can check out such articles on this link. Okay? Of course, the women did not explain who might provide them 24/7 protection, no matter what choices they made. They did not explain who might pay for any such protection services, no matter what they might be. In short, the women were saying that regardless of what they did, they should be protected 24/7 and they should never be in any danger, no matter how they dress, what time of night it was, no matter where they were. That millions of women participated in these slut walks shows the in-group bias again from women. Were all these women sluts? Certainly not. Many of them were simply not attractive enough to be sluts, no matter how much they might like lots of male attention. They wanted to be identified with the cool group because that made them feel better. And dear lady, you have to wonder, since when exactly did labelling oneself as a slut become the cool thing to do? When did being a slut become something that women aspire to as cool and the in-group in the West? It certainly is not that way here in Germany. So, large numbers of women identified as the in-group women who are sluts, and they held global marches to demand that somebody do something about the fact that if you walk around in the middle of the night, scantily clad, alone, perhaps also drunk, you are more likely to be attacked by a criminal. Really, I did not make this up. By contrast, my father's mother, my grandmother, would come to dinner one night per week when I was a little boy. We would drive her home because dinner finished after dark. When we dropped my grandmother off, we would wait in the car. Nana would open the door, turn on all the lights, look around the house, and then come back to the front door and wave that the house was clear of any intruders. That's what she did. Now, my Nana never did have an intruder. Not ever. Okay? And yet, for years, this was the routine she went through to make sure that on the very off chance there was an intruder in the house, that my father was right there and would know. Also, the implication to me as a small boy was clear. If Nana did not come back to the front door and wave that all was okay, it would be my father's obligation to go into the house and face whatever danger he might have to face, because the only reason his mother would not come to the front door again and wave that all was clear would be because there was an intruder in the house, right? In those days, guns were very commonplace in Australia, so any such intruder, if he was serious, would have a gun, and my father would be expected to face down a man with a gun to rescue his mother. That's how it was. Okay? Now that was 40 years ago when I was a little boy, and we all know that the level of crime all around the Western world has skyrocketed in the last 40 years. What would have been screaming front pages all week years ago would barely make a story at the bottom of page 5 now. Husbands are killing wives and children in record numbers. Mass shootings are happening every week in the US, literally. What was considered a normal and natural precaution against a very, very small odds of an intruder in my Nana's house would now be called sexism and discrimination, and someone must do something that there could possibly be an intruder in an old woman's house. In years gone past, someone did do something. Her son, who dropped her at her home, would make sure that she was safe and be ready to be an unpaid personal bodyguard should there be an intruder. Women now call this the oppression of the patriarchy. As I say, I really could not make this stuff up. And given that we're just on 15 minutes, we'll just break here for a word from one of our sponsors. And thank you very much for returning. Of course, we want to also get rid of this "not all women are like that" discussion that women like to throw at us. It is one of the arguments that is very much the most common argument presented by women. So not all women are like that. I wish to contrast this in-group bias with another very unattractive statement that Western women so like to make. This is a statement, "not all women are like that." This is simply one of the most stupid and ridiculous statements that Western women make. And yet, women make this stupid and ridiculous statement on a remarkably consistent basis. With in-group bias, when a man makes a comment about a woman or a specific group of women, what do women do? They immediately exercise in-group bias and put themselves in the group that has been mentioned and then pretend to take offence or be upset and attack the man who made the comment. And then in the very next breath, they are just as likely to say, "Not all women are like that," having just made it clear that they think they are just like other women. The insanity of your positions is very clear to us quality men, but it seems you are oblivious to your own insanity and the stupidity of your statements. And because you show no signs of being aware of your insanity and the stupidity of your statements, quality men like me find you very unattractive. What sort of man would like to be with a woman whose best argument when presented with the criminal behaviour of women is, quote, "not all women are like that," end quote? Certainly I do not want to be involved with any woman who thinks this argument has any merit at all. Dear lady, let me demonstrate to you why this argument has no merit. There are 7 billion people on this planet. Of those 7 billion, at least 2 billion are adult females. These 2 billion adult females are spread all over the planet's surface. They have very varying religions, cultural norms, shapes, sizes and characters. You name it. In a set of 2 billion women, you can find all sorts of variations. So to put forward the argument that out of 2 billion women, there is one woman who does not present the characteristic that is being talked about is the weakest of all possible arguments. Of course it is true that in a sample size of 2 billion women, there can be found one woman who is not like that. So making the claim "not all women are like that" has about as much validity and strength and relevance as any argument saying "the sky is blue and the grass is green." Yes, we know the sky is blue and the grass is green. So what? Yes, we know not all women are like that. So what? The very fact that "not all women are like that" argument is forwarded with such regular monotony, right alongside with your in-group bias, which is the claim that women are almost identical merely by virtue of being women, is unattractive in the extreme, my dear lady. As we have repeated, you have every right to practice in-group bias. If a man makes a comment about a group of women, such as I comment about Western, English-speaking women who live in Anglo countries, which is what I said at the top of this book in terms of intended audience, and you wish to falsely extrapolate that to all women via your in-group bias, and then you come back with the most stupid and ridiculous of arguments, such as "not all women are like that," you are free to do so. I cannot stop you from making such fools of yourselves. But you should not imagine that you are doing anything other than making complete fools of yourselves when you do these sorts of things. And such extrapolation, followed by such stupid and weak and ludicrous arguments, only make those quality men who are open to the idea of marrying a woman cross you off their list. No quality man wants to be with a woman who has ever forwarded the argument "not all women are like that." I can assure you. A woman who forwards such an argument has signalled very clearly that she does not have the ability to use logic and reason to even the level of the average 7-year-old boy. And quality men do not wish to be saddled with a woman who lacks the ability to use logic and reason, even to the extent that she cannot recognise "not all women are like that" as one of the most stupid, weak and useless arguments that could ever be forwarded. This is right up with, and I like this one, "not all women are like that." This is right up there with, "if you do not know why I'm upset with you, then you don't know me very well and I'm not going to tell you," which I've had thrown at me plenty of times. The games women play in their pretenses of being upset so as to emotionally manipulate men are repulsive to us quality men. We're tired of you acting like 5-year-old girls to pull at our heartstrings and manipulate us emotionally so as to get what you want, as opposed to holding an adult conversation over any such topics and issues. Now, my dear lady, you can choose to continue with your in-group bias. You can continue with your "not all women are like that." You can continue with you "if you do not know why I'm upset, then you don't know me very well and I'm not going to tell you." You can continue with all these things. As Jennifer used to say to me, "You can't make me do anything." All I can do is inform you that such statements are a very big red flag for quality men. We know these statements well, and we know that they signal that the woman who make them is unattractive and unsuitable for marriage to a quality man. Such women can be left for the many other beaten men who are desperate for the smallest of female attention. The lesson for you today is this: if you do not exercise in-group bias, if you know you are an individual and you deal with comments as an individual on an individual basis, if you never use emotional manipulation, if you never use such stupid arguments as "not all women are like that" when there are 2 billion women on the planet, these things will be noticed by quality men and you will be more attractive to these quality men. That is your lesson for today. Thank you for listening.